some questions later. Again, we will be discussing the full gamut about what the CPC does, and then into the membership and how to get involved. So without further ado, Nathan, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sly. And thank you for all your support and learning together with us through this last year. But excited to break down just these 4 items here. We'll go through the most updated and revised mission and vision for the CPC. We'll break down this CDX Common Data Exchange language. Then we'll talk about these task force initiatives and really what those plans are for 2019, how membership leads to delegates and other opportunities for AEC next year. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. And do definitely ask questions within that question bar as you're going along. Do want to build in plenty of time for questions at the end. But for those who are not familiar with the whole history of the CPC and COSA and how we to a Bluebeam Extreme conference where we're frustrated with PDF documents and the drawings and how they were coming out from designers and engineers, realized that the challenge was less about technology and more about the people and the process. Our next year we met again, brought those design partners with us, created the construction guidelines for PDF documents. And in version 1, then kind of went on the road, started presenting at BIM forums, other user conferences, really getting the word out about how these existing PDF standards that just needed to really be referenced, and the communication and awareness that was lacking, started to see pains with poor interoperability standards or poor adherence to those standards. 2017 was a big year for us. Got our 501c3 nonprofit status. We had a formal merger with the Construction Open Standards Alliance, COSA, so Benny Baltrowski, James Benham, a lot of the other technology folks, and now really representing both industry and technology. And then another thing that was great in 2017 had the PDF guidelines referenced in the NB Goes, the National BIM Guide for Owners. The last year, sorry, and then in this last year, some of us most likely were sorry, take a breath here. I tend to talk fast. But in 2018, we had our second Open Integration Summit. This is where we introduced that concept of the Common Data Exchange, or CDX, which again we're going to go into here. Our mission here, as you can see, the Construction Progress Coalition unites architecture, engineering, construction, AEC professionals, technology solution providers, TSPs, and their governing organizations, GOs, to promote a common data exchange, or CDX, to help project teams define interoperability standards, which at the end of the day is the shared pain that we're all facing. Our vision, which I think is a huge concept or a huge topic right now, as you see at the top in that cloud, is dashboards and data and measurements. And so as we read here, to define a new baseline for the measurement of project performance that I think whether you're a designer, builder, inspector, operator, or any of those technology providers, we all want to do that. But we can only get there when we focus on shared value, transparency, and streamlined collaboration. So as we dive into breaking down the Common Data Exchange, or CDX, we'll look at, now that we understand why we care to do this, we'll look at who, what, where, and when. So who, the players, literally players or tokens, represent either our governing organizations, our owners, our authorities having jurisdiction, or our facility managers. And then our AEC players are our architects, our engineers, our trade contractors, our general contractors, all those different players that support the design build process. So what are the different exchanges? Because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily one single common data environment. There are data packages that could be PDFs or IFCs or APIs or BCFs, and how are they exchanged through either CDX listed exchanges or CDX certified. We'll talk a little bit later about what each of those mean. And then ultimately, with that data, it can either be verified by an individual, it can be integrated through a CDX platform, or it can be done through a CDX session. So where does the risk reside? Is really looking at understanding how contracts do play a very significant role in this, and that at the end of the day, the basic need, the tier 0, is to have a clean, complete, reliable, common data environment. And above that, we should have a safe, seamless, and secure dashboard, collaboration dashboard to work and report within. Above that, we need that formal category for designers to communicate their liable design decisions and communications. And then above that, we need a formal place to track the cost and schedule impacts, whether they happen before or after the bound of realization that we'll talk about in a second here. And ultimately, that tier 4, that top tier of the owner's expectation, the owner's vision that we want to protect and exceed and not deteriorate on. But when do these things happen? So this is the 4 phases that, again, this goes back into lean concepts and other ideas. But regardless of the type of project that you are working on or the contract, there are 4 phases of the programming, the coordination, the procurement of the project, and then the operation of it. And what we're really trying to focus on is where are these boundaries between these major phases? Where is this boundary of alignment, and whose input is needed before that boundary of alignment, before we begin VDC coordination? What is the boundary of realization, that submittal review or that bid that releases for fabrication or creates cost once you pass over it? And then ultimately, what is the boundary of certification before we get into that operations phase, and who really controls that? So how are we going to take this language? How are we going to take all these words and make them into real standards, make them work in the real world? I think that's what makes these initiatives unique, and it's a 4-step process. So the first one, got to identify what that shared pain is and be very specific about the workflow that we're focusing on and who's impacted. We'll then form a CDX task force initiative around that shared pain. That's going to be a 5 to 9 delegate committee. Says that industry and organization representative delegates will be greater than the number of technology delegates. So we need representatives from all, but don't want to see a majority of technology delegates for obvious reasons. And then that team will submit their proposed scope, the budget, and their pioneer project that they would like to implement that on. Step 3 will be to define, test, and measure that implementation on an actual pioneer project. We use the term pioneer rather than pilot project because, in our opinion, pioneer projects are not allowed to fail, and we'll ensure that we put the resources to iterate and to learn and create a success, not allow it to. Practices do that legwork to make sure that what happened there was communicated, both the successes and the lessons learned, and create more templates to ease the adoption of other projects adhering to those same interoperability standards. So again, for those who were not at AEC Nexus last year for the Open Integration Summit, had some really great discussions about 4 of these shared pains and shared pains topics. So we've really done the majority of the legwork for step 1 of identifying the shared pain. We can see we talked about the as-built handover. We talked about all this field data to dashboard collection and reporting. We talked about the submittal exchange and how to transform that, as well as once late changes do happen, how do we effectively and efficiently track those true cost impacts? And out of those, the one that I think has probably gotten the most traction and that I wanted to share with everyone, again, this is still more or less in confirmation mode. We're having conversations. In fact, I'll be in Arizona in January to present to the Electri Foundation, their board members, to request funding for an initiative that would put together an idea that Dave Burns from McCarthy and Sam LaMonica from Rosenden have had many discussions at different conferences of, how do we connect these different platforms that we're using, these different standards that exist, and create some real win-win scenarios on some real-world projects. So excited to announce more stuff as this comes out in the coming months, and create more CDX task force initiatives like this for those other shared pains that we were discussing. You can see here the numbers representing again who are which AEC representatives, which GO representatives, and which technology representatives, and that the number of industry and organization is greater than technology. All right, so to get a little bit technical on exactly how this works and how we're going to teach the industry how data works, is to break down a really simple metadata example. And let's just say this is a sample RFI of a title, a question, some administrative data, but we see three components there of structural, descriptive, and administrative. And that's really how we break down the three steps of the CDX development process. So, probably a few on here will recognize every single one of these logos, but I'm sure everybody recognizes at least one of them as a standard that represents them. I'm sure there are many more on here that should be on here that are not, that we're missing, but this is the groupings of different taxonomy standards, different representatives that fall into that structural category that we need to figure out what are the common points between them first. So that's that step of creating a CDX listed integration that any software product could apply to have themselves listed as, and we'll certainly do on those pioneer projects. The next step here is to go to that administrative data, the stuff that should be fairly consistent, is sort of profile based, and be able to certify that. So you can see translating between company standards, because the reality is that from project to project, it is going to be different. But if we've got the same taxonomy translations between different company standards, a CDX certified integration would be able to do that. And then the last one here, and kind of the most difficult and sort of the unknown, as we'll get into this with Pioneer projects, is how do we verify that export data? The fact that if we've got everything into a common data environment, how are we checking it? Who's checking it? When are we checking it? Because checking descriptive data is very hard to do with technology. It almost needs to be a manual human process. And so, where do we insert those to be most effective, to have reliable data and more efficient, reliable outputs? And if anyone is asking themselves, where does blockchain fit on all this stuff? I think whenever it does become more of a mainstream opportunity, that would be one of those potential outputs, along with other more traditional file types. But ultimately, this is about communication. CPC is a 501c3 educational nonprofit creating, marketing or educational marketing, educational resources to promote these adoptions. So, really appreciate for Travis being able to speak about CPC in front of about 2,000 plus folks at the AU Connect and Construct. Many ways that we're getting this message out, but we want it to be more than just talk. We want to actually show how this stuff is helping improve projects and how we're measuring those successes. Where we're sharing what's in the PDF guidelines and other documents as we produce them, as well as more podcast episodes and more ways of getting that audio content out for those who like to listen to podcasts either while they work or driving to and from work. So getting into the nitty-gritty of how we actually operate as an organization, from 2013 to 2016, we're more or less just a kind of floating organization with in-kind support from Bluebeam, as well as some conference-based at BIMForm events and some partnerships with Consensus Docs. And it was in to all of our legacy technology partners. But in 2019, we are moving our model to membership dues. So there'll be annual membership dues for both AEC companies as well as technology service provider companies, technology solution provider. And we'll also have, be going after a lot more innovation grants like the Electric Foundation, as well as moving into some media sponsorships to help us pay for everything. And excited to announce that Autodesk has confirmed their sponsorship for next year, as well as one of the thought leadership packages. So thank you, Autodesk. All right, so how to get involved. Each member of a CDX task force committee must first be confirmed as a CPC delegate for their company. And you can see there are 3 different ways based on those 3 different perspectives to become that delegate. So if you currently work for a AEC firm, we're looking at an annual commitment of anywhere between $500 and $5,000. Again, the cost is going to range depending on the number of employees that you have, both craft and admin, because that is ultimately who we are serving. And then depending on those same ranges, those companies will receive anywhere between 1 and 3 delegates. Moving into the technology solution provider, you can see it's an annual commitment that ranges between $250 and $12,500. And for anyone from single startups to obviously large AEC technology firms. The cost dependent now is on AEC sales revenue, so not necessarily your investment, but sales revenue, which is probably debatable, and that's fine. We don't really care about that. Just want to make sure that we have a fair spread for kind of who is paying the load based on how much you're receiving from the industry, and then again those will break down into delegates based on that size as well. The last one here is government organization delegate. This one is not pay-based, is based on just a signed memorandum of understanding. We recognize that certain organizations may look at what we're trying to do and say, hey, that looks like an overlap or looks like competition, and we've been very sensitive to that and wanting to make sure that we're here to really be a glue, kind of the Switzerland of Switzerland's, to help event producers, help media firms, help anybody out there that is looking to get this message out with fresh ideas, fresh experiences, and kind of our unique style of innovation. So again,
hey, Nathan, let me just add
here
that please do ask questions, especially on this slide. There will be more information that will come up that will kind of drive in more details on the different tiers, but please do ask questions even now so that we can better prepare to address them all as we go forward. Just a quick note.
Yeah, and thanks, Sly, because this is something that we've had a ton of feedback on. We've gone around many different times on, and so do want everyone's feedback on this. We've gotten certainly so far some good head nods, and those who have much more specific questions, again, yes, Sly has much more detail to go into in follow-up meetings. But one thing to note in some of the fine print there, so we are offering discount at least up until a certain time early next year for all those legacy sponsors from past events to, again, be members this next year at a 20% discount. And again, what this is going towards, we'll actually talk about in the next slide here. So going into the allocation of funds and the membership benefits, because if you look at similar organizations that do similar things, our membership dues are actually quite low, and that's intentional because we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. But what it's going to go towards is that industry content creation, more blog posts, more podcast episodes, more ways of getting that educational marketing content out there. We're looking to fund the collaboration and content management platforms, so we can get great nonprofit discounts on Slack Professional for those who are big Slack users, and the ability to mine data out of that, as well as IdeaScale is a great innovation platform for us to potentially use for management of the CDX task force initiatives, and that thing is probably about $13,000 a year, just for the software itself, let alone the management. We've got plenty to do with website optimizations and improvements there. I don't think any of us are full-time marketers, but we need to start being better at communicating. So I bring in the resources and consultants to do that better. And then all of our, again, administrative expenses, so legal, accounting, marketing, whatnot. But more importantly, what are the benefits to those members? So as we've done in past years, want to give that exclusive branding and promotion on our website, and especially at partner events. I'll talk in a second here about how we're going to redo our structure for the AEC Next conference, as well as other opportunities like Talk and their industrial grade innovation that's in their second year coming up in this September. Another opportunity is that the delegates that are part of the membership, they receive early access to vote on these initiatives and kind of early input as these do get defined, whether they're part of the task force itself or part of that delegate voting round. And then delegates also get access to the internal CPC collaboration platforms. So as we set up those Slack Pro channels and the idea scale, obviously get access to that. And then inclusion in all the promotional and media production that we are putting out.
Hey, Nathan, since we're talking a little bit about delegates here, a few questions that maybe that's the answer to. So one, can you share how membership works with other industry nonprofit organizations? Because people might have several alliances with the organizations. So I wanted to call out here. Then the individual member of CPC does not get in order to get a delegate, you have to be a member of CPC. So if you are, let's say, a member of USIBD and USIBD is participating in some CDX, they will not necessarily represent one company, they will represent the whole organization. So to the extent that any company wants to dive deeper, need to be a member so that you can get delegates. And please, Nathan, feel free to elaborate.
And I would say as long as it's clear who that person is representing. If that person is representing the firm that they work for, then they're representing that firm, and that logo and that position is makes sense there. If they are truly representing the USIBD and all of their interests are 100% USIBD, then that would, I think it's all about, again, what perspective are they representing in that scenario, and what intentions do they have? Because we don't want to shy away from everybody's motivations in this. This is a very complicated, compounding challenge, and so the more transparent we can be with our intentions, and especially if we work for multiple companies, but by being transparent and showing who we're representing, I think, because I'm sure, I can think of 3 or 4 different scenarios where just the technology firm versus also being part of USIBD is a great example, and that's where we need to have more of those conversations with folks like BIM Forum, USIBD, and the others, to establish what those relationships and those partnerships are, because obviously that's the MOU that we want to have with them, to establish the mutual partnerships, the mutual benefits, but then really establish what are those checks and balances that we have to really make sure that all of these efforts produce positive results that are fair for the industry. All right, awesome. So just a couple more slides before we get into questions. Thankfully, it doesn't look like AEC Next and our Future Tech are going to overlap this year. You can see May 21st through the 23rd is going to be AEC Next. We will be back with the Open Integration Hub. Actually, we're going to be rebranding it to the CDX Hub this year. Should be even bigger and better, taking a lot of feedback on how to improve the programming of it, how to improve the sounding, kind of soundproofing of it, and just make it a better overall event. Bring the Shared Pains podcast there as well. And one thing, as this whole shifting from membership away from event sponsorships. So for example, for those who were sponsors last year on the technology side, as a member, as long as you have some booth at the AEC Next SPAR 3D conference, membership plus that AEC Next booth is equivalent to what last year's banner sponsorship was. So as you start to see what some of these numbers come out, it actually ends up a lot less for some of the newer entrants, which I think will be a good relief. Again, trying to definitely listen to the feedback from folks and improve it year over year. And just a quick couple plugs for things that are coming up related to both of those. So if you go to the AEC Next website, you'll see all the advertisements for a webinar that actually Sly and I are going to be doing, be a little bit deeper dive on the CDX and other efforts next week, December 6th. So feel free to sign up or share that, as well as if you are not yet have your sponsorship booth for AEC Next, I know they're running a promotion through the end of this week to get some passes to that the party that's on that first night. All right. One other thing that we're going to be doing as well, hopefully everybody has seen, or if not, please do check out on your favorite podcast listening device or at constructionprogress.org/podcast, the Construction Shared Pains podcast. We are just rolling out episode 5 as of today or tomorrow, depending on confirmations from all of our interview guests. And we'll have end up with 6 episodes in season 1. Looking to do I think 20 to 25 episodes. And so there will be a sort of limited amount of guest interview opportunities, as well as if you do want to have the podcast come to your event. I mentioned before that Autodesk has taken kind of one of those 5 slots, so only 4 remaining left if you do want to have the Shared Pains Uncut come to your user conference. All right, and it would be remiss if I did not thank all of the great supporters, both our board of directors, all of our executive officers, and our committee chairs who have helped kind of corral everything together and put some structure behind this great scaling organization that we have. But as we know, everybody is extremely busy, and so we did have a few folks that had to bow out due to other obligations. So coming into next year, we have 5 the open executive officer positions. And live now, if you go to constructionprogress.org/apply, you can apply for any one of those 5 positions. And if that's something too where you work for a company where you don't think you could get the funds for the membership dues to make yourself a delegate, this could be a way to do that sort of in-kind service and waive those membership dues so that you can become a delegate along with that executive officer position. So go on there and apply. We're going to be have that open until the 21st of December, do some interview calls in early January, and have everything wrapped up by the end of January with our new executive board. So, and thank you, Sly, for sticking around. we're lonely up there on the executive officers right now, but we'll be filling them in quick.
Yeah, we'll get it done.
But yes, you want to take us home with all these next steps?
Yes. So thank you very much, Nathan. I think we've been working on it a while. That was the high-level picture, a great overview of what CPC is all about and where we are headed. We will take some questions now, but just for those that are maybe going to start dropping off, here's some contact information, anything regarding the membership information, and we will answer some questions now, but there will be follow-up information. We will share the deck and the recording that answers a few questions about getting this information to generate internal interest in the organizations. In terms of the CDX, feel free to contact Nathan directly, or you can go through me, because we expect there to be a flurry of activity now towards the end of the year and into the new year as the new team gets put together. Please do apply for the executive positions once again, and do watch the Shared Pains podcast and kind of promote it around. So without further ado, I'm going to get into some of the questions. We won't necessarily do them by name.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking at them right here. Yeah, so one here was asking about the government or organization delegate. Is this referring to industry associations? So yes, absolutely. If you're an MCAA or an AGC or an ABC or a CFMA, all of those organizations and USIBD. So whether you represent your member constituencies, or you represent standards, or you actually represent the government, or actually a true project owner that's not a construction manager, always also fits in that governing organization per se, because they do govern the project. So all of those would fall into that category and would not have an annual membership due. It would be just a memorandum of understanding, and it would only be if there was an initiative where that organization had funds to fund the initiative itself, that there might be funds exchanged. But otherwise, we're just looking for a memorandum of understanding.
Cool. I think that covers a few questions. So Nathan, the next one, let me read them. Is the AEC Next the only event that will be done next year?
So the ACNX is the only one that's confirmed officially on the book. Well, unofficially, but is confirmed. Our intention is to do this as many locations that are willing and able to have us and kind of fits within that model. These are the partnerships with those same organizations. Like I just mentioned, we could use ENR Future Tech as an example. Would be a great one that we would love to bring folks up to, but that's a conversation we would have to have with them of what is that mutually beneficial MOU partnership. So the short answer is, we have the equipment, we have the tools, we have the materials, we have the people. What we want to be at these events, as long as just like an AEC Next, they make it easy for us to be there, and that's where we're excited to have these conversations with industrial grade innovation and the talk folks to try and do that as well. So
cool. Thanks for that. Yeah, some more questions about getting the information. So one pager, again, there will be information coming up after this, and we do plan to kind of take the next level deeper with those that are interested in discussing the membership immediately now. So let's see if anything else comes up on the question thing. Thank you very much for those that are telling us a great job. So great job, Nathan. And at the end, while people are still here, I wanted to ask, to the extent that people are willing to express their interest now, anybody who's interested in having a conversation about membership in CPC or CDX, let's say within the next week, feel free to just say interested in the questions, and I will reach out directly. And for everybody else, again, there will be an organized follow-up with more information coming up.
And what one question I did see here, there was a good one. So can you share how membership works with other industry nonprofit organizations? I know I hit on that a little bit, but one specific thing I want to highlight is that if, for example, you are an existing member of multiple other organizations, our intention is to, within that memorandum of understanding, extend mutual discounts. So that if you're already a member of this other organization that we're partners with, then that would get you a discount on our annual membership. Those are the types of partnerships we're trying to create, but again, still looking to formalize those with those organizations.
Cool.
All right. Sly, we'll get that one share. I know we've had a lot of requests for that, and it's been hard to boil this stuff down. But I think we're ready now. We can.
It's all coming. And what I would suggest now. So thank you very much again, all of you, for making the time today. Let's you and I, Nathan, stay at least for another minute, to the extent that any other questions come up. But to the extent that there's no questions, we can let the people start falling off. But we'll be here for another few minutes in case anybody comes up with another question or wants to discuss anything right now. Again, there will be more follow-up and more detailed information coming up. And thanks everybody for showing up again.